A schoolteacher looked at an 8-year-old boy and told his mother the child was too stupid to learn. The word he used was addled, like a rotten egg, confused, scrambled, beyond saving. That boy went on to hold 1,093 United States patents, more than any single person in American history. When he died, communities across the country dimmed their lights in tribute. Not metaphorically, they literally turned off the lights he had given them to say goodbye. That is Thomas Edison. And I want to start exactly here, at that moment in the one-room schoolhouse in Port Huron, Michigan, because I think it tells you almost everything you need to know about how Edison understood the world and his place in it. He was 8 years old. His teacher, Reverend G.B. Engel, found young Al, Edison went by Al as a child, disruptive, scattered, impossible to manage. Engel reportedly told Edison's mother, Nancy, that her son was too stupid to be worth teaching. Nancy Edison was a former schoolteacher herself, and she was furious. She pulled him out of school immediately. And then she did something that I think is one of the most consequential decisions in the history of American technology. She told her son that the teacher didn't know what he was talking about. She brought him home, educated him herself, encouraged every question he had, and, this is the part that matters, she never once treated his curiosity as a problem. Edison remembered this for the rest of his life. In his own words, "My mother was the making of me. She was so true, so sure of me, and I felt I had someone to live for, someone I must not disappoint." I love this, because the lesson isn't just about a devoted mother. The lesson is about what happens when one person refuses to accept someone else's verdict on what you're capable of. Nancy Edison essentially deleted the label. And by deleting the label, she freed the boy underneath it. By age 9, she gave him Richard Green Parker's School of Natural Philosophy, a book of scientific experiments for young readers. Edison didn't just read it. He performed every single experiment in the book. Every one. And that hunger, once lit, never went out. He later claimed to have worked his way systematically through the entire Detroit Free Library. Whether that's precisely true or slightly embellished doesn't really matter. What matters is the disposition behind it. He read everything he could get his hands on. Constantly. Obsessively. At 12, he took a job as a newsboy and candy seller on the Grand Trunk Railway, running between Port Huron and Detroit. He used the idle hours on the train to read in the Detroit Library. He set up a small chemistry lab in a baggage car. And then, at 14, he started printing his own newspaper, the Grand Trunk Herald, on a printing press he'd installed on the moving train. One of the first newspapers ever printed on a moving train. He was 14 years old. Most 14-year-olds were doing considerably less. And then comes the moment that changes the direction of his life. In 1862, he pulled the young son of a station agent named J.U. Mackenzie from the path of a runaway boxcar. Mackenzie, out of gratitude, offered to teach him telegraphy. Edison learned it. And for the next 7 years, from age 15 to 22, he worked as a wandering telegraph operator across the Midwest, the South, Canada, moving city to city, job to job. And this is where the real education happens. Not the formal kind. The kind that comes from being thrown into the world and forced to figure things out alone. He was always the fastest operator in the room, but he was perpetually more interested in how the equipment worked than in doing what he was assigned to do. He tinkered constantly. He experimented during work hours. He was fired multiple times. He was reprimanded constantly. What looked like insubordination was actually something else entirely. He was running his own curriculum. He just wasn't being paid to do it. What this period built in Edison was something more durable than conventional discipline. It built an obsessive, self-directed focus on problems he chose himself. He learned to work long hours, routinely 18, 20 hours a day, not through willpower in the grinding sense, but because he was genuinely consumed by the work. He slept in short bursts, on lab tables sometimes. He ate irregularly. He simply did not experience the work the way most people experience obligation. He said it directly, later in life. "I never did a day's work in my life. It was all fun." And I think that's real. I don't think that's a performance, because you don't sustain that level of output across 6 decades by forcing yourself. You sustain it because the thing you're doing is the thing you most want to be doing. By 1868, at 21, Edison files his very first patent, an electrical vote recorder, a device designed to allow legislators to cast votes electronically rather than by roll call. The machine worked perfectly. Nobody wanted it. Legislators told him they preferred the slow roll call process because it gave them time to negotiate and change positions. The technology was sound. The market wasn't there. And Edison made himself a rule on the spot that he kept for the rest of his life. Anything that won't sell, I don't want to invent. Its sale is proof of utility, and utility is success. From that day forward, he would find out what the world actually needed, and then go build it, not the other way around. That single decision, made at 21 after a single failure, shaped everything that came after. He was not a pure scientist. He was not chasing knowledge for its own sake. He was a commercial inventor with a very clear standard. Does this solve a real problem for real people? If not, move on. The boy the teacher called addled. The kid printing newspapers on a moving train. The wandering telegrapher who kept getting fired for caring too much about the wrong things. He was building towards something. He just didn't know yet how large it would become. Menlo Park, 1876. Edison is 29 years old, and he does something that had never been done before in the history of human civilization. He builds a factory. Not a factory for making products, a factory for making inventions. Think about what that means. He looked at the lone inventor tinkering in isolation and said that model is too slow, too inefficient. He was going to industrialize discovery itself. He staffed the place with machinists, chemists, mathematicians, glassblowers. He called his core team the Muckers. That was the actual name, the Muckers. Men willing to do the hard, dirty, repetitive labor of experimentation, without glamour, without glory, just the work. And Edison worked alongside them. Visitors would show up at 3 in the morning and find him there, sleeves rolled up, running another test. He made a public promise when he opened Menlo Park. A minor invention every 10 days, a major invention every 6 months. And people thought that was the boast of a showman. It wasn't. It was his operating philosophy stated plainly. Invention was industrial work. Not inspiration, not magic. Work. He said it directly. I never did anything worth doing by accident, nor did any of my inventions come by accident. They came by work. And then he proves it, almost immediately. The phonograph in 1877 stuns the world. Even Edison is surprised by the reaction to that one. But he's already moving. He's already looking at the next problem. And the next problem is light. The incandescent light bulb project runs from 1878 to 1879, and it is the most complete demonstration of his method ever recorded. The challenge is finding a filament, a material that will glow brightly inside a glass bulb without burning out in seconds. And nobody knows what that material is. Nobody. So Edison does the only thing that makes sense to him. He starts testing everything. Platinum, carbonized paper, carbonized cardboard, fishing line, thread, grasses, wood, bark, spider silk, hair from the beards of 2 of his own team members. He tested hair from his workers' beards. Over 6,000 materials in total, documented in his own laboratory notebooks, which still exist. Reporters came to Menlo Park during this period and asked him how it felt to fail so many thousands of times. And I love his answer, because he rejects the entire premise of the question. He said, I am not discouraged, Because every wrong attempt discarded is another step forward. He didn't experience those thousands of tests as failures. He experienced them as data. Each one narrowed the field. Each one told him something true about the world. The process was the method. Failure wasn't the opposite of progress. Failure was progress. And then, on the night of October 21st, 1879, a carbonized cotton sewing thread filament, sealed inside a glass bulb with the air pumped out, glows. For 13.5 hours. Edison watches it through the night without speaking. But here is the thing that most people miss when they tell the light bulb story. Edison knew that a glowing bulb in a New Jersey laboratory was almost worthless by itself. The bulb was only the beginning. What the world actually needed was a complete electrical system. Generation, transmission, distribution, the whole thing, built from scratch, because none of it existed. So he designs it. All of it. Generators, underground cables, meters, switches, sockets. He said, "We will make electricity so cheap that only the rich will burn candles." That was the goal. Not a novelty for wealthy homes. Universal access. And on September 4th, 1882, the Pearl Street Station in Lower Manhattan opens. The world's first commercial electrical power station. 82 buildings, 400 lamps, lit from a single source, underground, invisibly. People who were there described standing on the street and watching the lights come on as something close to supernatural. Edison was 35 years old. What I keep coming back to is how he thought about the relationship between effort and outcome. He had no patience for mysticism around genius. None. He said, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." And he built his entire life as evidence for that claim. He also said something that cuts even deeper. Its sale is proof of utility, and utility is success. He was not trying to be clever. He was not trying to impress other scientists. He was trying to solve real problems for real people at a scale large enough to matter. The light bulb is just the most visible proof of that standard applied with total, relentless commitment. The Muckers, the sleepless nights, the 6,000 filaments. This is what systematic obsession actually looks like when you let it run. There's a quote from Edison that I think about more than almost anything else I've encountered studying the great builders. He said, "I am not discouraged because every wrong attempt discarded is another step forward." Read that slowly. Every wrong attempt discarded is another step forward. He wasn't performing optimism. He wasn't telling himself a comforting story to feel better. Thank you for listening to the story of Thomas Edison. If you'd like more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment on who you'd like to hear about next.